Well, isn't this interesting? We started talking about this back in January as planes and boats and everything were loaded up with both physical gold and physical silver to come here to the U.S. So I just wanted to remind you that we began this conversation. This is when the trend began. It doesn't matter that it takes a minute to see it. But the reality is that it is a new reality for the physical markets and a huge problem potentially, well, we're watching it unfold right now in silver, for the Bank of England. Remember, we talked about the fact that all of this physical gold coming back into this country looked more like a repatriation, since typically in the U.S., all traders do are the contracts. But all of a sudden, somebody with very fat fingers were taking delivery. Well, we can see what happens when there is a short squeeze. Now, what's a short? A short is selling something that you do not have. You're counting on prices going down so that you can go in and buy it cheaper, and there's your gains in the middle. The Bank of England doesn't really have very much, if hardly any, gold for themselves, but they do store a lot of gold for other countries. Where did all that gold that they ship to the U.S. come from? And what happens when those countries make the choice to repatriate? Because what we're really seeing are the holdings that the Bank of England is actually reporting. And you can see that they are at extremely low levels. And even though there's been an attempt to refill those coffers, not really having it, is it? There is a problem that is brewing in the gold market. Again, we're experiencing that right now. We'll talk more about that in the silver market. But you can look and see here in this country that took in all of the physical gold. Because here's the reality. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Those ETF contracts, I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to show you why. But look at the zoom up in the physical holding of the gold. And even though some of that leaked out of the system, no, it's pretty darn close to its high. There you go. What can I tell you? Because what we're looking at is gold makes a comeback. Guess what, guys? Gold never went away. Now, they don't want you to think of it as money, but this is sound money. When it is physical gold, this cannot be inflated away. And the central bankers are now holding more gold, or at least the same level as this whole fiat money, pure debt-based system experiment started out, going back to the 70s. And I love it when they refer back to a prior time, because it tells you, it's one of the things anyway, that can tell you where we are in this trend cycle. Central banks are loading up because actually the same reason why you should be loading up. They want to retain their freedom and their choices. And this stuff doesn't do it. And as we're watching the test in this stuff, which this is just a representation of intangible Bitcoin or any of the cryptocurrencies that are designed to look like this, can you see they're not the same? And can you see that these are not outside of the system? Risk on, risk off. The test is unfolding now. But I want you to also notice that gold is the second highest held reserve asset. Really? US dollars still top it. But in 1971, when this experiment really kicked off, the dollars in the system and being used in global trade and being held in reserves, I should say, was 79%. Now, it's 46% now. Can you see that it's almost half being held, where gold is making a huge comeback? in terms of central banks, and has been actually since 2005 is when that shift occurred. 3 full years before the great financial crisis was noticed by the public. That's all very telling, because who knows more about what's happening with the currencies than the central banks, for goodness sakes. And in fact, even the U.S. Treasuries being held in reserves, we know that's been declining for quite some time. And China and Japan, the biggest buyers, they've been liquidating or not buying as much, or allowing runoff on their balance sheets, I should say, since 2013. And gold is about to overtake Treasuries being held in reserve. Sound money, the flight to money that cannot be debased or inflated away. And we need it redeemable in our system, because if it is not redeemable, the public, they can say anything they want, just that, like they have forever. Since especially 1971, when perception management had them manipulate the spot markets to keep you away from gold. You need it. Every single portfolio, I don't care what it consists of, needs a foundation of sound money. Otherwise, you've built your wealth on sand, not bedrock. The reality is that gold is the safest reserve asset that there is, because it is the only financial asset that runs zero counterparty risk. Everything else is credit. Everything else is counterparty risk. And when we look at what the central banks, the amount of gold that they say that they have, there are huge discrepancies. And they just don't declare it, because they don't really want you to understand what's happening. They want you to feel comfortable in dollars, in the markets, in cryptocurrencies, in anything that gives them the power and control. Physical metals in your possession, both gold and silver, they don't have control of that. They have control of how you think about it. But even in the London vaults that shipped a tremendous amount of gold here to the U.S. at the beginning of the year, their gold reserves are still down substantially from where they were. What happens if enough people take delivery of those contracts? It's an explosion. You think $4,100 on the spot market in gold is a lot? It's chump change. It isn't even marginally close to the fundamental value, and it isn't even marginally close to the spot market value when the gold squeeze happens. Those are real fireworks, and you can participate simply by holding it and owning it. And we can together, one person can't do it, but together we can force fiscal responsibility to our governments simply by having redeemable gold in the monetary system. And that movement is growing. Join us. Make a difference in the future of our children and great-grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. Because when we're in a full service, full surveillance economy, those choices for our children dry up. Is that really what you want? Because it is totally the opposite of what I want. I want a fair and level playing field. And that's what redeemable gold in the system gives us. So together, frankly, there's not one little doubt in my mind. We can accomplish anything. Let's make a positive difference for the future of our children. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.